as possible. So now we are going to invite for the recap, learnings and opportunities, and next steps. We're going to call Rodolfo Jimenez. He's an economist, ex-professor of the UCR University of Costa Rica, and he has been a member of the Central American Academia, vice president of Costa Rican Association of ACORDE, or Development Organizations, and consultant for Presidents of the Republic, author of numerous studies and research papers. In 1985, he received the Ancora Prize on Essays for his book Costa Rica, Crisis and Impoverishment, together with Mr. Lisandro Cespedes. So, Rodolfo, you have the floor. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much. I want to thank Javier Canscante for all the effort, for all effort. I want to join the homage to Mr. Gonzalez Vega, who has been a friend, a teacher, and those of us who have been students with him. Remember two things. Well, first, we are always students, and we can have a relationship like a father-son. So, Claudio, I'm so happy that you were able to be with us. And I have to compete with very interesting but complicated things, and maybe you're going to tell me. I'm going to tell you that I want to have a very short summary and conclusions regarding Costa Rica's case. And this is a very biased summary, and it's aligned, and it would be what is interested from a point of view of economic policy and financial inclusion. And I'm going to do it very succinctly. We're talking about topics or concepts. And this is tenets of good policies. And this event gives Costa Rica very good learnings on these things we must not forget. These concepts would start with that the achievement of financial inclusion is something that is much broader than we originally imagined for Costa Rica's case. Normally, the concept is very narrow. We're talking about financial inclusion in Costa Rica. Before, it was just agricultural credit for small producers, then expanded for SMEs. But for us, it's clear that the concept transcends, and it's microfinance. These are savings and credits and other financial services that have to be present when talking about financial inclusion. And it's a broader concept, not only financing for small endeavors or projects, but only financing people and homes. And in particular in these segments where consumption needs or decision are interrelated, because the home produces and consumes at the same time. So financing has to be considered in this light. So we're saying, well, I'm only financing production. No, it's just part of the phenomenon of financial inclusion. You have to include the financing of the home and of certain consumption, because we must not lose sight the concept of financial inclusion, that this is a broader concept than the one we have considered, or the one that we manage and that we have discussed publicly in this country for the last years. The second concept, and the relevant topics here in Costa Rica, we have dedicated too much time to interest rates, control interest rates, and others, when this is not necessarily the main topic. And we must understand why in certain segments we have high interest rates, like monopolies or very risky segments, very costly segments, or financial operators are not using financial technologies that are suitable. And this concept has to lead us to the central topic of microfinance, which deals with financial technologies, how to produce and deliver financial products and services. It's a tenet. Traditional technologies are no longer applicable to, or maybe they never were, to the segment of microfinance. What is not that clear are the technology of microfinance, because they are very different, very heterogeneous, like the segments we serve. So we cannot have a one-size-fits-all solution for microfinance. And there would be technology that makes this a quality product and profitable. And this has to deal with innovation, with technology, and with the adoption of that technology, as well as learning from international experiences. And when I'm talking about technologies, I'm not talking about laptops or tablets or cell phones, but the set of procedures, how processing would be done, how information would be handled, how incentives would be established to produce these finance services. And it's a central topic. And in technological innovation, there are topics that many times are public goods with externalities, and many times the market not always may produce them. And the other concept, and Claudio has insisted on it, and credit is a limited instrument. And when we are talking about small enterprises or SMEs, the only answer is given is credit. More often than not, the issues are associated with market access or productivity, knowledge about production technologies. So we place too much faith on just credit. And these things that are not credit are a bit more difficult to design and deliver to small producers. So we think it is easier to order banks to give credits. And that's easier to produce accompaniment to micro and small enterprises, to SMEs. And another concept we have and would be prudential based or prudential regulation and oversight, and how it must reinforce financial inclusion. It is not opposed to it. It is they are allies. The stability of the system, financial health must be associated to financial inclusion. And from a country point of view, I want to make a few reflections. In some aspects, the country is okay. In other parts, the country has a lot to learn. The country has very good score, let's say, in access to deposit services. And the surveys by the Costa Rican Banking Association has indicated that two-thirds of the elderly in the country have at least one account in a formal entity, and this places us among the countries with better access to deposit services. And in this key aspect, banks, especially state-owned banks and the National Bank and the Bank of Costa Rica and Popular Bank, are really making strides, have had a very good trajectory of broad geographical presence, and they have been joining this process by credit unions, private banks, and mutuals. And also payroll payments have also been done through direct deposit.
and have collaborated in this extension of access to deposit services. Also, we have a strength in the payment system. We have a solid and modern system, innovating significantly, and the Central Bank of Costa Rica and Carlos Menegatti have been key factors in this task of making this payment system that permits an interconnection between different entities, different companies, and different people. Where are we not doing so well? If, although we have the previous aspects as positive, we do have a sub-banking situation in which we have many clients, but some with very limited services. Basically, some have only a savings account that use very little, or they have a debit card, and the number of debit cards is very extensive, but they use it to go to the ATM to take money out on the day of payment. Probably today is the payment date, and many people are standing in line to take their money out of the ATM to purchase cash. And there is a big challenge on the intensification of the uses of these instruments. Third point, we are weak in access to credit and people or homes. This is limited, and in some slides and some data from the seminar, we were able to see if we are doing well in deposits. In access to people, we are relatively low. In this task, access has been achieved mainly through commerce. Commerce is providing credit for the purchase of household items. In the case of Importadora Monge and others, they have played a very significant role by providing loans, credits to sectors, informal sectors, that are very far away from traditional loans. And also credit cards have access. And the access to these consumer products, however, we still have limitations on the extension of this access. And this is a consolidated database of the intermediaries, informal trade, and so on. And this will provide an access and reduction of the costs in the operation of intermediaries, in access to micro, small, and medium businesses. We also have limitations. If the political speech was equivalent to the access of the business, we would have an excellent access. However, it is not. And there is a presence of access, but in reality, we have a different situation. In a survey performed by the Banking Association between micro, small, and medium businesses, and these are the ones that bring credit to this business sector. Mostly is the suppliers, those who sell merchandise to other companies, those who provide raw materials. We do not have access to a microfinance industry. There are microfinancing services, but in general are small, very small scale, and the technologies being used are still far from being microfinance technologies. We are underdeveloped in that area. The country probably needs two things. First of all, topics of information, having better information systems on users and those and credit holders, and the policies should be having a stronger impact than it has. And also, we require imports of options or the establishment of technologies for microfinance that are still being used scarcely. And this is probably one of the contributions of the public policy that is more important than that of establishing funds. And this is not a topic of resources. This is more about finding the technology for micro and small businesses. This is not so much about interest rates, but it is more about how to have these technologies bringing credit at acceptable interest rates. The sixth point in Costa Rica. The efforts and there is no policy. There are efforts in the public sector and in general. I would say this is the 7th point. It is to establish a public policy for financial inclusion that will integrate efforts, that will establish the multiplication of efforts, providing better results than simply in an individual manner. We should have a group, and It should include the central bank, the Superintendency of Financial Entities, the Ministry of Public Education in topics of financial education, the Ministry of Economy, and the operators. And they should also to have a policy for the country to be able to provide a political priority to the topic of financial inclusion. And this seminar should become a first step, and even more since it is organized by the Superintendency of Financial Institutions, which is a very prestigious entity in the country, basically from the technical point of view, and it should promote and to generate a policy of inclusion and to addition a series of address a series of lagoons in this area in the country. I think this should be the fruit of this seminar, allowing us to have such an event. And I would like to invite Dr. Daniel Suchalski. I was about to speak without a mic. I think it's very nice to reach this moment, because this is the moment when we can start relaxing, because very soon we will be ready to go. We have worked very hard, and these have been very interesting days. We just heard a summary, an extraordinary summary, where we've talked about the achievements and the challenges. I had prepared already a presentation, but I don't even know if it's worth saying it, because basically there is nothing left to be said. But what I wanted to share with you was that the next big step, is to have mobile money, like on your phone. And this is going to happen, and it's going to revolutionize everything. This is the biggest event in the use of money and methods of payment. In 200 years, very little has happened, and by now we are at a point where we experience a quantic jump. Many things are going to change. For instance, in some countries, there is a collection of payments for movements between banks in different cities. That is going to disappear. If you can move your money using your telephone, I don't think there will be any reason to pay anything to move from one branch to another. And these are revolutions, that we can make a payment and have an instant confirmation of it arriving on the other end, and not only through financial information, also on your cell phone. It is incredible that a lady that lives 100 kilometers from Limon can send money to her kid in San Jose. 200 colones needed to pay for lunch. 2,000 colones for lunch. And that's going to change so many things. And this has to do with the movement of funds, because the inclusion and integration of individuals when they are part of the financial system, begin to interact in a different way. Very democratic, very integrated. But let's think about a country like mine, where there is two schools in Los Andes, and they are very accessible, and the roads are still very far from perfect, and the computer programs are very difficult. This makes citizens halfway citizens, 50% citizens, 65%. And we're not equal in the sense of how we feel integrated in the country. But now, all these differences are going to disappear. We will all be integrated in the same manner. And it is going to change policies in general. In the second century, there will be elections completely different from the ones we have experienced. Because in Peru, there are 30 million Peruvians, and everything is going to be integrated. For 2021, 10 million people are going to be connected. And many of them are going to be connected. In Brazil, in Guatemala, anywhere where communications are bad, we will have and that is going to move forward. And there are consequences for small and medium jurisdictions where economies of scale are of impact. It requires great volumes of movement to be able to have low costs. The costs are not low. There are high investments, and the use of technology will require constant investment, and this is perfectly manageable if we make the most of the economies of scale. But in Peru, that is a small country, we hardly are in the margin of economies of scale. Costa Rica, with all respect, is small, and with a population of 200,000, countries like Barbados is so small. What Fiji, for instance, has to do, they will not be able to have economies of scale. The same system needs to work for all the 5 or 6 islands in the Pacific and the Caribbean. Central America, as such, with the level of integration that they have, need to move very rapidly. You have many coincidences of banks. There are banks here, others in Honduras, others in El Salvador, and have already produced a certain integration automatically in the markets. However, with the future, these new systems of payment are going to be integrated with competition. This has also very good consequences, and we have to be clear on those advantages, because we need to make sure that they will work when making them compatible in a coherent manner in electronic funds. This is still part of the way I think. Without this knowledge, it doesn't make much more sense. And it is my responsibility with the delegations of the central bank for something really urgent. And I would like to provide the name of the inclusion organization that has concluded this important seminar. As thank you all for your presence. Thank you for welcoming us. Please make the most of this event. And everything has been told contribute forward to make this a continuous improvement process for everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, and have a very pleasant evening. Thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure for me sharing this event with you. Thank you. Goodbye.